Hello Weekend Warriors, welcome back to the workshop. This video is inspired by a near catastrophe I had yesterday when I was doing some printing, and when I went to clean up I dropped a tool through one of my screens and tore it, so I had to stretch a new screen. Well, that led me to remember that in all those videos I just did a couple months ago that showed all the improvements to my screen printing stuff, I didn't talk about the improvements to my screen stretching table. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about my screen stretching table. And it's pretty easy to build, and let me move the camera so you can see it and move the table so you can see it. We'll take a look at what the pieces look like and how I made them, and then we'll put a screen in and do a simulated stretch on it because, well, I stretched all my screens already. So I'll be right back. You stay tuned. Hang on. Okay, here's my stretching table in its entirety. So what we have is underneath everything I've got a piece of 3/4 inch plywood. It's about 30 by 36 or 33 by 36, something like that. And that's only because that was the piece that I had sitting around and I didn't cut it anymore. So there was no scientific reason as to why it's that size, it just is. On top of that piece of plywood I have 2 fixed bars, 2 anchor bars, which are tied with the adjusting bolts to my drawbars. Inside the screen hole here, I've got just a couple of pieces of 3/8 plywood that lift the screen up, so when the mesh stretches tight over it, it's sitting nice and flat over the screen, and then when I glue it, I've got a good solid glue joint all the way around, touching all pieces of the frame. Now, how's all this put together? How does it hold the mesh? Well, that's where these caps that are on top of the drawbars and the fixed bars come into play. Each one of these caps has got a groove about 1/4 inch wide that matches a screen spline that is also about 1/4 inch wide. Now let me switch over to the close-up camera so you can see exactly what these things look like when they're together, or when they're not together for that matter. Okay, what I have here in my hands, this is a drawbar. Now, drawbar is different from an anchor bar in that this thing actually moves. The top cap on it is held down with these bolts that are anchored in using T-nuts on the bottom. So when they screw down into those T-nuts and press everything nice and tight. What it has in common with the anchor bars is the cap and the screen spline there. So let me go ahead and pull the cap off. So we'll go one piece at a time. Go ahead and dump those bolts out of there. Okay, so the cap, as I said before, is a piece of wood with a 1/4 inch notch down the middle of it. So, and it goes the length of it. And I did that on a router, just using a flute bit. Alright, so the screen spline here matches up with that, and you can see it fits nice and snug in that slot. You know, and it presses down nice and tight. And the idea is you want a good snug fit here. So we get that with the spline. Now, on the other end of the spline, there is a contoured notch, but it's not actually a notch, it's actually a V. And that, once again, is done on the router table, and I did this on the saw crate that I did in the previous video that I had converted to router mode. And I just used a chamfer bit on each edge, and I made a nice V groove there, or a nice V. Actually, it should look like that, so you can actually see the contour. And that will fit down into the contour of the bar itself. And you see that V groove there, that V groove was cut with a V groove bit on the router once again. So this guy also fits snugly right down in there like that, all the way across. Whoops. So this is with both the drawbars and the fixed bars. Now the drawbars, well, this is, I've got a couple different sizes. This is for a smaller screen.
And, well, I'll show you how those work. Let me switch back out to the other camera. Stand by.
Okay, back to the wider shot. So, mounted to my baseboard, as I said before, I've got the fixed bar and I've got an anchor bar. These are items that don't move. Now, they don't move because I've got 5 1/4-inch lag bolts coming up from underneath into the fixed bar. So, it can't go. It's not held down by any flimsy wood screws. These are good beefy wood legs. The anchor bar is held down by 5 hex bolts. Underneath, into the wood, I've got, well, T-nuts, just like these. So I've got a permanent thread in the wood, and then I've got multiple levels of holes, depending on the size of the screen. If I want to do a 19 by 21 inch screen, which from time to time, for some reason, I play with still, I have the ability of moving this up and moving the anchor back here up and being able to stretch those screens without having to waste a whole bunch of material or try to pull 3 feet of bolt. But right now they're set up for a 20 by 24 screen, and that's pretty much where I keep them. So then of course we have the drawbar, which is drawn up by these bolts going through, and on the back of the drawbar, once again, I have T-nuts, just like this one. And so the draw bolts thread through, they pull the drawbar back, they put tension on the screen. Now, what's holding the screen in? Well, we looked at the spline and the cap and all that stuff, but let's see how it actually works. So there's my short drawbar, and basically the material is going to lay down over the, oops, got it backwards, there we go. The material is going to lay down over the slot, and then the V side down, the spline goes in. Now, just for a little bit of extra hold, I usually fold that over as I'm putting the cap down. So I get the cap into place with the material folded over, and then it's just a matter of getting everything aligned and in place. Now, even before I put any tension on this, that material isn't going anywhere. There we go. There. Now I've got the tension down. I can't move that. The one thing I discovered when I got this together for the first time is you can't be too aggressive, because you can actually pop the mesh if you try to get too aggressive and go too fast. Now, how are these caps held on? On the anchors, I just use clamps. I figure on the outside edge like that, it's a piece of cake. It only takes a couple, and it holds down nice and tight. So that's that. So I guess it's time to do a simulated screen stretch. Now, I don't have any screens that are in need of replacement right now, so I'm just going to take one that I've got, and I'm going to spread some fabric. I'm not even going to use screen mesh because I don't want to sacrifice any to the video gods. Okay, now it's just time to tighten things up. Now, we do this slowly. And remember, this isn't real screen mesh. This is a shear from a curtain or something like that. It just was something I had on hand that I could sacrifice. I should mention that I used to have 1/4-inch draw bolts on the sides here. I noticed after about 10 screens they started getting a little snake-like because of the torque. So I went up a size. I went up to 5/16, and it seems to be working great. Okay, so now I'm going to go like 3 turns to start, and then catch up the edges, because they just basically hold things even as you draw up. Then on this side I'll go the middle 2, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yep, that one went 4. Okay, I can go 4, there's plenty of. And then catch up the edges again. Basically just until they make contact. Now it's got a ways to go. But basically the ones on the corner make contact and relieve the pressure on the middle 2 bolts. And the same thing, the 2 on the edges relieve all the pressure on the middle. So I'm not getting a bunch of warp, and I'm getting a nice even drawback as I go. And I just keep doing that until I end up with a stretched screen. Or until the material pops. But this will never get up to full tension. There we go, there was a nice sound. I didn't soften the corners, so they are getting real tight in the corners. But we're still pretty loose. I can still move the screen visibly here. Anyway, once it's pulled up to tension, then I break out my can of contact cement, which is just regular old Weldwood contact cement from DAP. Since I'm not worried about being in a production environment, I'm not worried about having to do 5 or 6 screens every day, I don't use super glue or CA glue with the accelerator. That's an expense I don't need, so I don't do it. If this was a production shop that had to worry about that sort of thing, then I would. And there we have it. A nifty little gadget that helps you along the way in your screen printing. Now, is this something I want to do every day? Do I want to stretch my own screens every time I need a screen? Well, the answer to that is no. You know, at $16 to $22 a screen for an aluminum frame, it's not really worth it to do all my screens that way. However, when I have a screen rip, when I have a frame laying around and maybe I want a different mesh, or it's a weekend and I can't just go buy another screen, I'm not out of luck. I'm able to stretch my own screens and continue on with the work I'm doing. And I can say that I've done it. So if you want to be able to say that you've stretched your own screens and done all the facets you can of screen printing, well, here you go. Something else to build, something else to use, and another handy tool in the tool chest. So that's all I got this time. Next time I'm going to start taking a look at another tool that I acquired this past summer, and it pretty well kept me busy all summer long with projects. So we'll get to that next time. But until then, you all keep up the good fight, and I'll see you. Bye.